Jeff. Jeff. Jeff.
Jeff Stein's our national and presidential expert, noted author. You can find his books at your favorite bookstore. Also, you can find the Iowa Business Report, the Iowa Politics Report, coming to us from his flagship station, KXEL, Cedar Falls, Waterloo, where Jeff is currently serving time. Hey, Jeff.
And we're flying our appeal to heaven flag upside down.
Oh, there you go. We'll get to him. We'll get to, the lover boy there.
You said flagship, so I went there.
We'll get to lover boy in a sec.
Yeah.
All right. So we have to start with this because you and I have talked about that Trump has not had the best lawyers. So today...
The fact that you said that while snickering is the setup for the audience.
So you're in court today. Yeah. You are the judge is giving his instructions to the jury on the case, and Alina Habba is sitting there behind Trump in the chairs. Now, once again, you're not supposed to use your phone in the courtroom, but the judge has allowed the numerous, entourage of Trump fans to use their phones and be there.
And media.
And media. And some of the media is for sure, yes.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between Eric and some representative from Wyoming or something like that, and a lawyer who supposedly or does have courtroom experience who didn't realize as she was looking at her phone that her volume was up, and as he's giving instructions to the jury, she starts playing a video in court, which got a fairly stern look from the judge. But I said to myself, how bad of a lawyer do you have to be that if you're going to be so blatantly, it's not the House reps or Eric or Don Jr. or something. It's a lawyer who doesn't realize, there looks like a funny TikTok video I should see as I'm in court.
It used to be that we said that the O.J. Simpson criminal case was the best example of the worst trial ever. I stand corrected. This is the best example of the worst trial ever because, again, I go back to the fact, if you had written this, if Matt McNeil sat there with his Smith Corona typewriter and a couple of sheets of carbon paper and tapped out a novel in the basement of his home, and if he put this stuff in that novel, the publisher would reject it and say, too fanciful.
Yes.
Nobody's going to believe any of this.
You're exaggerating way too much.
There's no way a lawyer would be watching a video with the volume up. Yeah. Just up and down the line. It's a clown car on all sides. And I just don't know what the lasting value is going to be of it other than, again, the best example of the worst case.
Yesterday's closing arguments, pretty standard stuff. Obviously, the Trump defense is all Michael Cohen. The rest of it is just circumstantial evidence. I did like how the prosecutor laid out. It was 5 hours, but they kept looking at the jury and saying, "Are you okay?" And they were all, yes. Multiple times they said, "Keep going." But
they're hostages, man. What are they gonna say?
But they
want their crumb of bread and their sip of water.
They basically started at running the entire case. Well, he started by basically addressing a lot of the defense's comments about Cohen, and then basically started at the very beginning of their case, now that they've showed all the evidence, and went point by point by point. And it took 5 hours. But, the people that were watching the trial, they said, it's not that the Trump lawyers could do any better than this, but it was a much more concise storytelling from the prosecutor side, as opposed to what the defense team really only the option they had, which is Cohen bad, Cohen bad, Cohen bad.
Well, if you're the prosecutor in any case, it's your narrative. It's your story. You have the burden of proof. That's why I have never heard of the prosecution going second. They always go first, and then the defense, and then the prosecution gets another shot. They always get the last word. I've never heard of them not getting the first word, but regardless of that, it's the prosecution's case. It's the prosecution's narrative. And so from the defense standpoint, any defense, you're most of the time you're waving your arms and going, nuh-uh, because that's the whole point of it, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm defending you on, grand hypocrisy or some charge that they make up, I don't know. I was going to say larceny, but there is one, so I didn't want to impugn
Panda
you.
smuggling.
Don't forget the smuggling. I especially like the smuggling. I'm going to say, nuh-uh, wasn't him. That was that guy, Patrick. And, that's how, that's the defense.
Reasonable
right?
doubt. Reasonable doubt is generally in a kind of a perfect world, I'll say it like this. What it does is it forces a prosecution to bring all the evidence and prove their case without a doubt versus the ability to say, well, did this really happen? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, that's the whole concept.
Yeah. I mean, what you're doing is you're defending. What's your best defense? Discredit their key witness.
Yeah.
And now I did not, obviously I was not in the courtroom. I did not follow tweet by tweet as people who had their volume down on their phones were telling us about it. If you're the prosecution, and I think they would have acknowledged this from the start, this is a nuanced case. This is not a smash and grab burglary from a jewelry store that's on a camera. This is a nuanced case. The defense is saying you can't trust that bad guy, Michael Cohen. They're simplifying the case because if you're the defense and you can get the jury to simply discredit or to feel that witness is discredited, that's your best shot. But the prosecution has to lay out this nuanced narrative that is not as easy to follow. Even those who are proponents of the case admit it's not easy to follow.
One of the things I found to be interesting in the jury instructions today, because of the 34 charges, some charges do not need a unanimous jury, but there were, I think it's one of them definitely needs a unanimous jury, correct? Am I not mistaken?
This thing is a train wreck. I cannot figure out how you have pools of 4 jurors to decide certain things and not others, but this judge is saying you do not need to have a unanimous.
But he actually came on back. There was one of the latter charges, and I think it has to do with the conspiracy. That has to be a unanimous decision. So there's because a lot of
linchpin. That's a fundamental linchpin to the whole felony aspect.
And one of the things that's going to happen is I don't think it's unreasonable that Trump is going to be found guilty of some of these things and not all of them. And I think that's kind of the case. But I think that, there's a lot of people on the conservative side that's like, all he needs is 4 jurors and that's it. No, there are some of the charges that expose a lower threshold, but the main charges still require a unanimous jury, correct?
Yeah. And again, you made an excellent point. There are 34?
34.
712 charges, whatever there are.
It's a short week for Trump.
You start on Tuesday and let's get out by the weekend. Forget that it's Trump. Just think of it as any criminal case. If you have 36 whatever charges, if it's going bad for the prosecution, having that many charges hurts you because it seems like you're piling on. If it's going very good for the prosecution, then the chance of an all or nothing, is increased in terms of it being found guilty of everything. It's kind of like when they start reading verdicts and it's guilty, guilty, guilty. You're like, oh, settle back because it's going to be, they're going to run the table. What you really could see in this, and again, trying to analyze a jury is nobody. The only person who halfway knew was Dr. Phil, and look what he does for a living these days. Much better living than you or I combined. But a lot of times they split the difference, and this is why a Wednesday beginning of deliberations is interesting. You really think they want to come back Monday?
Wow.
If they have not found, I'm looking at Friday afternoon. If it's early Friday afternoon and they don't have a decision, you're going to see the art of compromise. That's the art of the deal, my friend.
Yeah.
That's when that's going to come in because it's going to be, what can we all live with and just get the blazes out of here.
So basically, all right. So what has happened is since today, the jury has dismissed. They're planning on coming back tomorrow. It sounds like. The first testimony they wanted to read back there was one quote from Cohen, but it was 3 quotes from David Pecker, the National Enquirer guy, who is Trump's buddy. And the first thing I think about with that is, once again, we talk about the defense's closing. Just focus on Cohen. The fact that all of a sudden they're bringing in his buddy, who, once again, Hope Hicks, a lot of people that are allies of him testified against him in this case. If they're really starting to go into these other statements and the other evidence, that's where my guess would be. And once again, pure hypothetical, but you're guessing about the fact that it is looking, they are looking beyond Michael Cohen at that point.
It's like they're going in chronological order, witness by witness. Mm-hmm. And that's not unheard of if you're the jury, right? I mean, a quick verdict, if they would have come back with a verdict today, without even knowing what it is, I would have said to you, that's not a just verdict. Either way, doesn't matter. That's too quick to take this many weeks with that much testimony and this much nuance. The fact that it's like, well, what was that about David Pecker? And I'll talk about this other one against, like, wow, you guys are going chapter and verse down the list. And that's a very methodical way to go. Usually what happens in a jury is they just kind of, and I don't think you could do it in a case with 36 charges, but usually it's like, okay, let's just quick show of hands. How many think we're guilty here? How many think we're not guilty? You get a pretty good sense of the room. The fact that they are, in essence, starting from day one of testimony and working their way through, perhaps that suggests that they're not all of the same mind to start with, I guess is the way I'd phrase it.
I think a lot of it comes down to the head juror and the jurist, who is basically, if he basically sets the thing, we're going to just do, once again, complicated case, 34 charges, lots of testimony to go through. We're going to take, case number one. Charge number one. All right, done. Charge number two. Okay, we got some questions about this. I'm going to presume that that's the case. I would say this. I agree with you. I think there's just too much that, the idea that there had been a guilty or a not guilty verdict today would have just, that doesn't make any sense. I will say this: if by the end of day tomorrow, your thoughts on this? If by the end of day tomorrow, if there's a guilty verdict or a not guilty verdict, that it was pretty unanimous from the get-go that they probably did what you suggested. They did at the start of the deliberations. Okay, most of us, let's raise our hand. Who thinks this is all going to go one way or the other? And that they're just dotting I's and crossing T's for today and the part of the day tomorrow.
Oh, you mean the idea of, okay, we all know what we're going to do, but we got to make it look good?
Well, basically to make sure we dot I's and cross T's, yes.
Well, but that's the thing. I mean, again, forget that it's Trump. Pretend it's State versus McNeil, and everybody looks around the table and goes, he's railroaded. It's not fair. He is not guilty. Okay, well, how long do you think we should go before we tell them that?
Well, I think most jurors would say, okay, we all kind of agree on this, but let's go through each case each charge. And okay, because like I said, I think some of these cases, I'm having a hard time believing they're not going to find for Trump. Like the check, the fact that he has a check that he signed that basically is there. I mean, that's a pretty strong bit of evidence. But they never deny that there were payments. See, that's the thing again. It's like, what does the check mean? Now, I will tell you, I thought about this today, knowing that you and I would talk. And I was thinking back in my limited time, 10 years, whatever, as a defense attorney. The courthouse was across the street, okay, from the office. Yeah. There was a case where the jury went in. I stopped at the clerk's office to file some other paperwork. I went back to the office. I did not even get through the stack of little pink phone messages, because that shows you how long ago it was. And they called from the courthouse and said, the jury is back. That was not a happy day. I mean, for crying out loud, they hadn't poured coffee. It was that open and shut of case. And we were not on the prevailing side. Justice was probably served, but I'm just saying we got served. So, I mean, it can happen, but only, again, in a simplistic case, because you can't take the jury seriously otherwise. You're right. Exactly. And so, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but I think that if it happens by the end of the day tomorrow or by the beginning of Friday, it was one side or the other made a pretty good case. And because I think that even if you're going through 34 charges, that's basically you're kind of you're speed dating through that sucker there for sure. By the way,
you're speed dating if you're done tomorrow. I think if you get into Friday, all right, it's a little more valid.
They had to wake up Trump when the jury left, by the way. So they had to wake him up again. We got to come back. It's Flag Talk with Jeff Stein when we do return. 952-946-6205. It is the Matt McNeil Show. evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the afternoons on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It is the Matt McNeil Show. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205 is the phone number. So I'm going to read this. This is Sam Alito today saying that he will not recuse himself from cases, just throwing his wife under the bus and then picking her up and chucking her under another bus. My wife is fond of flying flags. I am not, Alito wrote. My wife is solely responsible for having flagpoles up at our residence, and our vacation home has flown a wide variety of flags over the years. In addition to the American flag, she has thrown other patriotic flags. Well, we don't care about the patriotic flags. It's the we love insurrectionist flags that she has a bad habit of putting up. First of all, let's just be honest. Sam Alito thinks we're all stupid. I mean, clearly, he doesn't have any other defense outside of, I have no idea. Who's this woman? What am I doing here?
Who is this woman? I thought you were going to say he's clearly anti-flag.
Well, I think, it's clear, the fact that he seems to, despise them with but yet someone keeps putting him up around him all the time. I mean, he sounds like a delightful neighbor.
Now you and I talked about this a bit last week.
Yes.
When you are a member of the judiciary, I don't care what level, you hold yourself to a different standard. Yeah. Now, again, there are some jurisdictions where you vote for a judge, popular election. They are listed as Republicans or Democrats, but you have many that follow it's known as the Missouri plan, where it's an independent, nonpartisan judiciary. The U.S. Supreme Court is one of those. You don't get elected to it. You're supposed to leave the R&D at the door, which means even if you believe a certain way, like I want to show my neighbor, and you just don't do it, period. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know about your home. I can guess. But if your wife put up a flag and you didn't like it, would you say, honey, what's that?
Garfield, what the hell? No, I do fly. I've got an American flag. I fly, and I fly the Minnesota flag, the Minnesota state flag.
Well, okay, let's say you just all of a sudden one day brought the flagpole home and flew them, and you didn't say anything to your wife. Is she going to at least say, I see you've done some gardening? Is
that part of a larger structure we're going to be building? Yeah, exactly.
So the concept of a U.S. Supreme Court justice coming home, seeing a flag upside down, and they don't discuss it, and he doesn't say, that might be a problem with my job.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, that's the problem where it's disingenuous to me.
Okay, putting the political side aside, which we shouldn't, because that's kind of the problem here. Thomas and Alito are the two stupid ones, because I'm just going to be blunt. They're the ones that are doing it so blatantly and red-handedly that it's easy to catch them. We don't know what the smarter justices who are like, maybe I shouldn't be just taking RVs off your hands or having you pay off my family members, real estate debts like Thomas did. There's probably things that are going on with all the justices. I'll be blunt, but the fact that you're so blatantly caught that Thomas is getting an RV from a guy who has cases that are directly affecting him in front of the courts, and he never once says, I don't have to recuse myself because the RV was something else. That Alito is here showing support. His family is showing support for January 6th insurrectionists. And apparently his argument is, well, my wife and I never talk. Okay. Yeah. All right. Sure.
Well, that could be.
Yeah. I guarantee they're not talking now.
I mean, it could be two halves of the same house. I don't know. But again, and this is difficult for spouses who want to maximize their careers. And I don't care what gender we're talking about here. But when one of them is involved in a politically sensitive position, the other one has to at least acknowledge it.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the White House. The press secretary is married to a CNN correspondent who took a leave of absence from covering the White House when her wife is the press secretary. That's what you do. Mm-hmm. And so you have to say, my husband's a justice on the Supreme Court, and I really believe in my own personal career, but I'm going to have to decline the opportunity to take this business, or I'm going to have to have a grudge match with, I'm going to have to fly the Garfield flag upside down. I don't mean the president. I got to do something because of the whole. How do you have such tin ear with regard to the whole? I'll at least put that out there.
How do you fix this problem? And once again, Jon Stewart went after Menendez in New Jersey and said, you're really stupid at this if you can't figure out how to go into Congress and make a ton of money, under the books. If you didn't see that, that's actually worthwhile watching. But, you clearly have a problem. And once again, I'm not stupid enough to not think that all of the Supreme Court justices are getting some of this kickback. How do you solve this problem without basically, I guess, putting another, 9 justices or 10 justices on the Supreme Court and basically, then having a 1-vote rule to change it? I just don't know how in the world you would ever fix this.
Well, that's the problem. You really can't fix it because even those who come to the court clean, if you will, it's the lifetime appointment thing. Where's the removal? Where is the mechanism?
You can remove them. You can impeach them and they can be removed. But, it is a process. Yes, there's a process to do it. Yeah.
But as opposed to a term limit, opposed to, see, that's the thing. When they at AM 950 and the good folks in Chicago said, you have a job for life. You've been hell to live with ever since.
Cicada life, but
with the same squawking noise that makes
it makes you appreciate the cicadas. It is. This is the problem. You can't have a Supreme Court that nobody trusts to give legitimate rulings anymore because, you rule one way. That's a brand new RV.
Well, any court, and that's the whole foundation of our system, is that the one branch that was supposed to be apolitical.
Yes.
Oops. Problem.
Like I said, I just don't, I think you're going to have to. Have we ever had, I think we have had Supreme Court justices kicked off the Supreme Court, correct? I think they have been. We have to go. I thought there was 1 or 2 that were post-Civil War, that were pre-Civil War appointees. They were like, okay, it's time for you to go now. I think that they did actually 1 or 2. So,
well, that's your homework.
I will look up and find that. Jeff Stein, once again, find his books at your favorite book retailer, and as well the Iowa Politics Report we will post a little bit later on. Jeff, thank you very much. Talk to you next week. Chicago, have a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Hour 2 up next.